You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get the last word.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. This is May the 16th, 2018. With you today is myself, Carl, and the always wonderful Joel is away this week. There was a number of scheduling difficulties this week that have led him to not be here, but we have replaced him with two fantastic guest hosts, Stephen and Rachel, hosts of the Hockey Feels podcast, another Alberta Podcast Network show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
This is very exciting. Why don't you guys take some time, let everyone know what is the Hockey Feels podcast? We've promoted you on the show before, but it's better coming from your mouths.
We don't have an elevator pitch. What are we? What are we, Rachel? What
I don't know.
The Hockey Feels podcast?
We like hockey, and we have a lot of feelings about it.
We do.
And we talk about those feelings.
we less stats, more feels. That's basically how it goes, I think, on our show.
Yeah.
We kind of started about, 3 years now? Is it 3 years?
Yeah.
I wanted to do a hockey podcast because Connor McDavid had just been drafted first overall. I was like, that's going to be fun. Wow, we're going to rocket right to the top of the league standings, and I want to have a place to sort of talk about how great the Oilers are. And then I thought,
I've been miserable for, 43 years as a Flyers fan.
Our entire life, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was the perfect co-host. We knew each other for a few years through Doctor Who, and so I thought, let's talk about hockey on a podcast, and so here we are. So we had one good year with the Oilers, which was the year before, so that was kind of fun, and then this year was less fun. So we talk about other stuff around the world, like NWHL, CWHL, international hockey, that sort of thing. When our own teams are getting us down, we sort of go elsewhere and talk about stuff around the league.
That sounds exactly like us as an Avalanche and Maple Leafs fan. There's been a lot of dry years. It's hard to remember, or the Avs had success so recently after last year. But hey, playoffs for both of us this year. If you guys need to, we do have what we call Joel's counseling coach. So if you ever need to talk about things, you just come over here. He took the keys to the couch with him. We also have the Rant Shack, which can help you if you just need to let loose. You can hop in there and just let your feelings loose.
Now you tell us.
Now you know, right?
I know. Now I know.
Come July 4th, when the Oilers trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for something incredibly disappointing.
Shut up.
You can come here and borrow the shack. It'll be just fine. And, it'll be great. You're welcome.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a 1-for-1 trade too.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'll trade into the Flyers, and then you guys can both have some feels. That could be fun.
For Andrew McDonald, great.
Oh, I don't even think Peter Chiarelli's that bad of a general manager to pull that one off.
Yeah,
I won't put anything past him.
Maybe Goodash though.
No. Just don't.
Some size. You got to play big Alberta hockey, and Radko Gudas is big Alberta hockey.
It's working. So when he's done taking out the rest of the league, that's when he goes after his own teammates in practice. So thank you.
Very, very true. Well, thank you guys for being here and filling in for Joel. Let's dive into some of what's happening. We are sitting here on Wednesday. We have Vegas and Winnipeg on. Both the series are at game number 3. But before we do that, let's remind everyone about the proud sponsor of the Alberta Podcast Network, ATB Financial. ATB wants you to know that they are a bank that cares about you. They are supporters of hockey in Alberta, and they do a lot in the community. If you head over to atb.com/listens, you can let them know some of the ways that you are looking for in a bank, some of what you need. atb.com/listens. Head over there and find out what they can do for you, and they can find out from them. So, hockey. The Tampa Bay Lightning bounced back after looking miserable in the first 2 games of that series, came out with a win. All it took was to not play at home. The home team this playoffs is not the nicest thing. We say that sitting here, Vegas up 3-1 at home, but the home team winless in that series so far. What are your thoughts on the Tampa Washington?
What do you think, Rachel? That's your purview. Those are teams that you both like and hate at the same time, depending on who's in the playoffs. Depending on the day. Yeah. You have a complicated relationship with the Caps.
Yes. Well, Tom Wilson. I was actually pleased to see Tampa come back in this series because, of course, I want it to be a good series, and the more games, the better. So I would like both series to go to 7 games if possible because more hockey. But, I think they just somehow wandered out of the desert and figured out where they were and how to play against this Washington team. And hopefully that bodes well for a more evenly matched series moving forward. But they did have a little bit of help, I think, from the officiating.
Oof.
Well,
I think they considering that the Caps outshot them handily in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Vasilevsky definitely played well, and the officiating this whole playoff has been skeptical at best. So I think you just have to assume that if one goes against you, one's going to go for you because it's a coin flip.
It is. I wouldn't say that it's just going to necessarily even out because I think Tampa's got a couple really bonus calls over. They got a bonus call in game 2, but they scored in the power play to make it 2-1, but then they went on to lose 6-2. Anyway, I feel like they've kind of gotten 2 or 3 calls going their way. There's a call in the Vegas game, for instance, that was a guy falling down, and they called Perreault for tripping, but. I find it odd, and this is an overall kind of thing. It's kind of happening tonight in Vegas as we're recording this, is that the series aren't really that close. They're just teams alternating blowouts, essentially. Like, it was 4-2 the final between Washington and Tampa, but it was 4-0 at one point, wasn't it? And it was just like it's over quick. Is what and then teams sort of gets a couple goals in garbage time, and that's about it. I just find like this playoff has been kind of disappointing to me. It's just there's been hardly any overtime, and there's hardly even any 1-goal games at all. It's just been, I don't know what you two think, but I think it's been a little bit underwhelming.
Oh, 100%. I honestly, every time playoffs come, I know that I'm going to lose hours of sleep every night because even being on the West Coast, I'm like, there's going to be some, like this Vegas game that starts at 7 o'clock. The first round, there was Vegas games that were starting at 8:30, right? An 8:30 game wraps up at, 11, go to overtime.
Try being in Eastern time.
Well, I know, right? So,
yeah.
For me, I know that. I assume the same for you. But I'm not. I'm sleeping just fine. I'm getting my beauty rest every day. Doesn't help at all, but I'm getting it. And it's very disappointing, the fact that there's no overtime. These games aren't close, but the series are still going deep. And so, I don't know, maybe as the feels podcast, I'll go to my feels on this one. But for me, I feel like I don't even borderline want more of it. Like, do I want more hockey? I want more good hockey. I don't want to just show up and have a game that, like tonight, Vegas scored 35 seconds in and hasn't really looked back.
No. It kind of reminds... You go on, Rachel. Sorry.
Yeah, I have to say the Vegas pregame intros have been worth every penny. Especially tonight's. It was pretty special. It was pretty
special. We'll call it that. Yeah, that's... they've been getting more and more wacky with every playoff round. Like we went to, Rachel and I and my wife and another friend of ours, went to a game in Vegas in February, and we thought the opening then was like bizarre medieval times meets WWE kind of opening. But then the playoffs start, and the first round was like out there, and then the second one was crazy, and then the one tonight was like, yeah, it was ridiculous. And sure enough, they scored 35 seconds in. And right when they did, I thought, yep, this is over. I had just a feeling right when they scored that quickly, and the Jets have kind of been that way for the whole... We're already talking about the West Coast already. Sorry for jumping around here. Is that if the Jets are down early, then that's it, apart from that game against Nashville where they came back from 3 games to none down. I just find like it reminds me in some ways of the 2004 Cup playoffs, where that was the height of the dead puck era, where basically all the games in the final were like 1-0 or 2-0, and whoever scored first won. And it's kind of the same way this year too, except though that team that scores first is then scoring 2 or 3 more goals and just sort of like having control of the game in a fairly quick fashion. And then it's just been one team trying to play catch up for the rest of it.
Yeah. I wonder if it really speaks to, I think, a lack of ability to adjust in game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that teams are doing a really good job of adjusting between games, and maybe it's an overemphasis on video analysis. I don't know. But they're really not able to make those quick line adjustments or, strategy adjustments on the fly to really change the course of a game.
Well, and I think I look at a lot of these games, and so many of them, a lot of the teams in here, we see a little bit of it, but there are very wide open teams left in the playoffs right now. And in that regard, if you get scored on, the only way to really get back at it is to get the puck and start pushing it out and moving towards the net. But if you're sitting back on your heels, then yeah, you're going to let Tampa score 4 goals on you, right? Like it's going to get out of hand very quickly because there's so many offensive talents in these games that I find that there's a lot of that happening where they're not adjusting quickly enough to really pick up that weakness on how they're getting it.
Are we going to blame analytics? I'm going to blame analytics. That's what's ruining hockey. It's because analytics is a very reactionary approach to the game where they sort of analyze what happened in the game and then adjust for the next one based on that. And I think perhaps you're right, Rachel. Maybe there's less in-game management going on and just sort of like surveying the ashes of the disaster that just happened and seeing what you can do to improve. And that's basically been Winnipeg's playoff up to this point, is that they win big, lose big, win big, lose big, and they sort of go in that order.
I think because I am very much like an analytics-y person, as
am I.
You bring that into hockey and I'm eating that up. So, I look at this and I say, well, we have, analytics. I would attribute that to the fact that there aren't blowout series, in that they'll adjust to what happened and go out, and then it is this back and forth. I don't think that's because the coach himself still needs to be able to coach in game, and you can't wait until someone comes from up above and says, here's what needs to happen. You should be able to see on the ice the analytics-y things of it, right? Like the eye test versus at least for me, the eye test and the analytics are starting to merge themselves into where I watch a game and I'm like, well, they were just bad, right? Like they spent a lot of time. Sure, they might have had the puck, but they didn't really do anything with it. They're turning it over. They can't, they're making poor exits out of their zone. Like these are things that you shouldn't need analytics for to be able to tell you that. But that's what, in some regards,
it helps support it.
To. Oh, for sure, yeah.
You can look at, for instance, the heat maps of where chances are coming from and where shots are coming from, and then you look at the goalies you're up against, and it should be pretty obvious where the high chance shots are going to come for a particular goalie. And if your heat map doesn't align to that, you got to adjust. And that's something you can do pretty quickly in game.
Mm-hmm. Or, so the goalie, and there's not really any right now that have that big of a tell per se, but the shoot glove side or whatever, you see that. There was one team in the first round, I forget who it was, and they just went glove side all day. I think it might have been in the Leafs against Boston one. I think it was on Freddie. They were just going glove side all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you're right. So few goalies have tells, do they?
Yeah, it's literally just they all do the same thing. But so let's stick, since we're here, let's stick in the West for a little bit. With this game, presumably Vegas going up 2-1, and the back and forthiness of it all, what do you think? the Jets going to come out in Game 4, win it in Vegas, and then go back? What are your thoughts and feelings on this?
I'd like to say that the Jets have it in them, but I don't know. The past two games, the way that Vegas has sort of come out and scored super early and has just kind of got Winnipeg on their heels, and I don't think they've been able to get over that. And I think Nashville learned how to basically just shut them down when they had a lead, and Winnipeg just could not beat that in Games 4 and Game 6 of that series. So I don't know. I think Winnipeg needs to get a lead and needs to have control of the game in order to do something. So if they don't score first in Game 4, I'm a little worried for them.
Rachel, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think they just, if they don't control the game at jump, they're not going to figure it out. And that just scares the crap out of me because, I mean, I do honestly don't care who wins this series particularly, mm-hmm. but just thinking about Vegas and the Cup final is just like, it's a lot. It's a lot to handle.
Much. It's too much right now. I can't do it.
That's my thought. I don't know about you guys. Yeah. I'm very much anti-Vegas right now. And I don't know if it's because...
explain. I'm curious to see what your reasons for, because I think we all can sort of come up with reasons why we don't like Vegas right now. But
I'm surrounded by people who love Vegas. The media is all in on Vegas because it's a story, right? This is the first time this has happened in a professional league ever, really, right? Like, this is unheard of for something like this to happen. So, but I just what started me not liking Vegas was their social media. Like, just the way that they handled all that was super annoying. And so there was that side of it. And then, I know it sounds petty, but there's also the side of me that, earn your dues, right? We've all struggled. We've all had difficulties. And I really do not look forward to the insufferable Vegas fans if they win the Stanley Cup in their first season, just for the next however long. It doesn't matter how terrible they are next year. They're like, well, we've already won a Stanley Cup. Doesn't matter. I don't look forward to that side of it. And I guess the other side of it is inexplicability, what they're doing, right? The fact that they've ridden William Karlsson's 24% shooting percentage to a 43 goal season. I was talking with someone just before we recorded about if he were to shoot the same shooting percentage as the top 22 goal scorers in the league. Top 22 goal scorers in the league shot 15.7%. If he shot that, he would have had 28 goals, which is 15 less than what he actually had. So that's a big difference. And playoffs are made of small sample sizes. And so you can ride a small sample size hot shooting streak like that. And I don't have the numbers for his playoff percentages pulled up, but those are the kinds of things. I'm like, William Karlsson is not a 43 goal scorer. He is not going to shoot 23% next year. Nobody in the league. The best players in the league. And I personally, is he good? Yes. Is he great? Maybe. I want to see it again, but he has not revolutionized shooting to a way that he's found something that nobody else has.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean about the social media thing, because I think when they started up, we all assumed they're going to be like every other expansion team, even though there hasn't been one for 15 years or more. And we thought, oh, well, they'll win 15 games this year, but at least their social media will be cute. And then, of course, they started winning, and the social media kept being the same. And so now that and the opening just kind of looks like insufferably smug already. Shut up, come on, I've said it on this podcast because a friend of mine pointed it out to me, and I'm happy to spread this theory. Is that Vegas is so good because the league as a whole is so good, because all the players basically train the same and are, the gap between the best player in the league and the worst player in the league, I think, is a lot smaller now than it was 15 or 20 years ago. So you can sort of cull together a team of misfits, so to speak, that were cast-off, sure, but there are still pretty good players. And then, of course, some teams, I think, probably underestimated the Golden Knights and gave them players in trades just so they could keep other players that they wanted, or in the case of Florida, letting Marchessault go and Pittsburgh just saying, here's your housewarming gift, a franchise goalie to start your team with. It was like, because we know it's going to take 4 or 5 years and he'll be retired by the time you get good. I think there's a lot of that going into there too. So I'm worried a little bit for Vegas because I'm curious to see how I was thinking earlier this week about how when Colorado when they got the Avalanche, from Quebec in 95, 96, and they won the Stanley Cup in their first year. So here's these new fans who probably don't remember the Colorado Rockies because they left town in 82, watching this new team. Hey, wow, cool. We get a great team. This is cool. Hey, we win the Stanley Cup. That's amazing. And then, they had unprecedented success for this first 4 or 5 years, and then they bottomed out, and the fan base just deserted them. And I'm worried that Vegas, unused to hockey pain, the worst kind of pain there is, will be spoiled by the fact whenever the Golden Knights do lose, that it might actually hurt that franchise.
Well, and if you look at like the average, right? There's 31, soon to be 32 teams in the league. If you look at it that way, on average, 30, you should win a championship every 32 years. Well, if you win in year one and you go 32 years until your next one, yeah, that's
right.
It's going to be a real long drought. And that's, obviously things get weird and there's dynasties and things like that, but like this Vegas team's not built to be a dynasty. This team is built to have success right now, which is great because that's how you build this fan base.
See, you say that, and you never know what'll happen.
Yep.
I do say that, but the reason that I say that they're not is because I don't this is most likely the last. Well, it is going to be the last magnificent, fantastic year that Marc-Andre Fleury will have. But these goaltenders, they don't get better at 33 years of age, right? So next year, you look at him, the way he's going to do what he's done this year. He will continue to tail off towards the end of his career, and that's fine. That's what athletes do. But I don't think that you can have a dynasty that's, centered around a 33-year-old goaltender. And, Malcolm Subban was good behind him, so if he's actually a good goaltender, then sure, then they could have one. I think that is one of the reasons I look at him yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, I will say it is going to take them quite a while to build a strong prospect pool because right now they're kind of flat, right? They have their team and they the Chicago AHL team, but they don't have a ton of prospects because obviously it takes years of drafting to get that into their system. So. In terms of replacement parts, they don't have a strong pool to draw from at the moment. But they will get there. Yeah,
when you are trading a first, a second, and a third for Thomas Tatar to be a healthy scratch, that's not a good way to build that prospect base up either. So,
no.
But hey, let's hand him the GM of the Year award. Let's do that.
Yeah. I do have to say, I kind of disagree on the suffering fan point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I used to think that way. Absolutely. I know some people that just happen to have jumped into Blackhawks fandom right when they got good and then got those cups and they just didn't know suffering and I was bitter about it. But I kind of got over that. And I'm like, you know what? More hockey fans is always good. And whenever they jump in is when they jump in. Las Vegas does have a history of hockey, just not NHL level hockey.
It's true.
And so there was a pretty decent fan base there built. And this is, obviously their first pro level team or, elite level pro team in the city. And of course, they're going to be naturally excited about it and have a lot more interest. Whereas if, they'd had a baseball team and a football team and a basketball team and then just added hockey, the excitement level might not have been as high. So I think you sort of have to calibrate for that as well.
Yeah, and we'll see once the Oakland Raiders move there how that'll affect the fan base as well. But let's move over to the East again. This is a series that I was very excited for. You guys probably do not know. Last year, as the Avalanche were terrible, the last couple of years, as the Avalanche were terrible, to be able to give myself something to be happy about in hockey, I added a bandwagon. The Capitals were my bandwagon team the last 2 years, and then I was sick of it. I was done riding this roller coaster of the Washington Capitals, and so I jumped ship and picked a different team, and sadly I picked the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh
no.
So that happened, but that's all right. My actual team made the playoffs, so I didn't really need them. Beside the point, Washington has now beaten Pittsburgh, is in the next round, up 2-1, and for me, this is a series that has, I've had people, person after person, come at me and say, like, oh, how do you feel that now that you're off the bandwagon that they're doing well? Are you back on it? Yes, to a degree. I still like them. I still want them to win. The reasons I like them and picked them as my bandwagon team, all those pieces are still there. I just gave up hope in them accomplishing anything with those pieces because they repeatedly showed that they couldn't. I'm very happy that Braden Holtby has gotten the net back, and they gave up that foolish idea that Philip Grubauer should be the starting goalie. I still enjoy, I doubt he's going to come back. It sounds like potentially a broken hand for Nick Backstrom, which will make it hard. They keep, doing the Joe Thornton game time decision. I feel like he's not actually a game time decision, so I don't expect him back anytime soon. That'll be disappointing. But, Ovi, Oshie, those are guys that, they're exciting players to watch. I still have a lot of fun watching them, and especially against a team that also has a lot of great offensive talent. This has been a fun series.
I think Washington is kind of that, is that TV series that you kind of watch for the first 2-3 years. You're waiting for it to get good. And it was okay, I guess. And then season 4 comes along. Whatever. I got other series to watch, other things. And then that's the series.
And now
where
you're in it.
Really, it really gets good. And people tell you, fans that have stuck with it tell you like two episodes before the series finale, thinking, oh, you should have stuck with it. It gets amazing in series 4. That's what the Caps are this year.
Well, I'm glad that I'm still watching. I'm still there. I don't know, Rachel, what do you think about this series?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I was super excited that the Bolts kind of got their crap together and figured out a way to beat Washington just to make the series a little bit more interesting. But it does, just from an overall perspective, seem like maybe the Pens really were that, metric ton weight off their shoulders. And somehow they are playing lighter. They're playing more aggressively, but smartly. And it's just that they're able to just do things that they haven't been able to do in the past simply because of this specter of the Pens hanging over their heads, and then not getting past the second round over their heads. And now they're just like, all right, let's do this. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And I've been really just enjoying that from a kind of neutral observer perspective.
It has been a lot of fun. And I do wonder, everyone, that's the side, I'm glad that you guys are the Hockey Feels podcast and you don't look at the statistics, because it does take, in this analytics era, we remove the mental side of the game out of it. Not the mental side, like thinking of where you should put the puck, but like the fact that they're actual real people, not robots playing this game, right? That there is stresses and there are difficulties from that side. And I tried for so long to dismiss that, but I feel like that's a genuine thing that we need to think of more. Like, yeah, it's a storyline and a narrative that everyone loves to run with. Like, the Caps can't beat the Pens, bah, but like, that gets in your head for sure.
It does. And it's been fun. Like, Ovechkin he's just such a happy-go-lucky guy now. He seems to be having a lot more fun playing hockey in this third round than I think I've seen him in a long time. And you're right, Rachel. I think that weight is it's gone. Once you slay the dragon, it just feels like there's nothing that we can't do now that we've sort of placed this almost, let's face it, this sort of self-imposed roadblock in front of us. Because I think it was more mental than it was Pittsburgh actually being a better team than Washington these past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Well, any last thoughts on these series before we go to some of the other happenings in the league?
I am intrigued to see how Tampa comes back in Game 4, and maybe it'd be nice if a home team won a game in that series to send some fans home happy.
Yeah, that would be nice for someone to actually win at home. Who knows? Maybe they'll. Well, Vegas is about to do it tonight, so that'll be a treat for them. And then maybe. All right, what else has happened in the league this? There was an interesting conversation. I believe it was a game. It was one of the games in Tampa. I believe Game 1, and what it centered around. And this might have been what you were referencing to earlier, Stephen. There was a high sticking call on Victor Hedman, in which what actually happened was he just took a puck to the face, and I think it was TJ Oshie, I believe, had his stick in the vicinity of his face and got called for high sticking there. Which then led to a conversation at intermission between Nick Kypreos and Elliot Friedman that got shockingly feisty in regards to officiating and what you can do. What came to that was the thought of having an official, whether it be a fifth official or you take another like a second linesman and put him up in at press level with cameras and all these things, all the technology at his hands, but with an earpiece to the on-ice officials, to be able to say, that was offside, that wasn't offside, that was high sticking, that wasn't. Because right now there's so many things that aren't reviewable, that reviewing takes a long time. If you had that, it would speed it up. And for me, I look at that and I'm all for it. I think if you were to find a way to reduce the number of errors in officiating as fast as possible should be the goal of any sports league. Because no one wants to sit there and have to ask questions about, is this goal interference? Is this offside? Let's look at this iPad mini for the next 20 minutes and stare at it and try to figure it out. No one wants that, right? As much as you say, I want the right call, which I think everyone does, you don't want it to be onerous. And I think if you have that, that's fine. So Rachel, what do you think?
Well, let me ask you, what is the difference between having that person, say, up in the press box with all the monitors versus in Toronto with all the monitors?
I don't think there's much of a difference.
Because there is somebody in the league office right now.
But that person's not... So we saw in Vegas, I think it was Vegas Sharks, they blew the play dead because someone told the scorekeeper, I believe it was someone from Toronto, said, hey, there was a goal scored, stop the play. But that
the one that they missed that bounced off the camera or something.
Right, yeah, exactly. But that doesn't happen typically, right? Like, that's not a thing that happens. If there is a penalty that's called, we don't see Toronto partake in that, right? Like, every single person in the world knew that Victor Hedman high stick was a puck to the face. Victor Hedman knew it wasn't a stick. A puck and a stick feel very different when they hit you in the face. But that was still called as that. And so if you had that, you can remove that error. And that's what I'm looking at, is the fact that it would be someone intentionally allowed to, whereas now it's kind of like, excuse me, I found a mistake, can we fix it? Which is how it feels now, because it's so infrequent. It's a couple times a year that happens.
I think I never saw the conversation, but I don't know if they're referencing having the fourth ref be in Toronto or in the press box looking at monitors. But I would be very much in favor of taking the second referee off the ice and putting him in the press box. And maybe actually, I don't know how they would do this, calling it live. I don't know if they have a whistle that sort of triggered or something that would blow in the arena, like perhaps somewhere on
like
the glass.
Like a goal horn?
Like a goal horn or something like
whistle?
that. Except it's a whistle. I'm just thinking out of the top of my head. Just because I think that the game has become so much faster that I think referees are just not being able to get into position to make the right call anymore. I bring up Connor McDavid, who I think could probably draw a lot more penalties than he has, simply because he not only beats opponents to the puck, he beats the referees to the puck. So when a player reaches around and grabs him or hooks him or holds him, the referee supposedly there to call the penalty is actually behind the play and can't see that a penalty has occurred. And I think that's kind of what happened with the Hedman play, is that the referee was just out of position. And it's most often the referee, like at center ice, calling a penalty that's deep in the zone, for instance, And I think if they just sort of removed themselves from the situation and just were able to see the game as a whole from above a little bit more, I think that might actually help. I would be intrigued to see if that would be a thing. I more video reviews on penalties that aren't actually penalties that's such a Pandora's box, because then you're looking at intent. You think, oh, well, come on, that wasn't a trip. And then they're busy reviewing literally every single call. And therefore, the referee will probably lose control of the game because there's makeup calls. Let's face it. If a referee misses a call for one team, often like within the next 2 minutes, the most minor of infraction will be called for a penalty to sort of make up for it, and that might go by the wayside. So it's a dangerous situation, but I can see the upside of something like that. Let me guess, Kyprios was the one who was against such a thing.
Yeah, shocking, right?
Yeah, I know. Evolution of the game. He's not a fan.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what you're suggesting there, Stephen.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, to your point about the speed of the game, if there is a penalty called and there's only one official on the ice, like I'm thinking you have to allow the linesmen to raise their arms on a penalty call as well, just so that somebody in stripes is in the line of sight of everybody, so they know a whistle is coming when possession is gained, right?
They used to do that for high sticking before they brought in the second referee. They for 2 or 3 years they gave linesmen the ability to call like major penalties, basically like high sticking calls and stuff like that. Back when it was like I think it was when it was an automatic game misconduct. I think in the early '90s. Sort of bring that memory up there, Carl, for the Maple Leafs '93 playoff run, but. And so that would be intriguing. I think that would kind of work. And they kind of took that power away from them once they brought the second referee in. But I think if you sort of like give the more flagrant stuff back to the linesman and have a fourth referee up in the press box, surveying everything from above, that might be worth looking into.
Or I think even if you, because the big difference that I see that makes this viable now versus 93 is technology, right? Like now you can have that official off the ice be in the ear of the linesman, and then he raises his hand, right? Like, oh, there you go. Like, I'm calling this penalty. Now we know that that's going to happen. I guess that could be confusing if he's calling like a delayed offside. Maybe that wouldn't work. See, this is why we have to sort these things out.
Right.
But there's ways that you could make that happen. I think technology makes it so that we can have that point in time where we don't have to be making these mistakes anymore. Sure, in theory it evens out, but in a 7-game series, and as close as these are, they're both technically best of fives now. Mm-hmm. In a best of 5 series, one penalty can change it over the course of a season. Sure, you're gonna get evened out unless you're the Flames and you have Dennis Weidman on your roster. So yeah, I just feel like there's a way that we can make this better. So
yeah, I think your idea better. I actually, instead of having a automatic whistle, that fourth referee just talks to the on ice referee, and maybe if he whistles down, kind of like when they blew the goal horn on that goal being a goal. They say, "Oh, I saw a penalty and you didn't," so and it's just a quick little like whistle, and then he'll blow it. Hopefully he wouldn't get screwed up. Like, oh, sorry, I thought I heard whistle. Sorry for interrupting your breakaway.
My bad.
Yeah, my bad. Carry on.
As you were. Yeah. With Joel not being here, we get a different reaction from the news that the Toronto Maple Leafs did officially sign Kyle Dubas to be their general manager. What everyone expected, what Joel expected, and I know he gave those thoughts last week. I asked before the show, I said, is there anything that you want me to convey for you to the listeners tonight, and his only statement was, "Go Leafs." So we'll leave that.
It wasn't like me where I'm like, oh God, I'm old.
No, I do know we have both had conversations that have helped us to come to the understanding that our time as potential NHL general managers is coming to an end now.
Yeah.
I think we knew that our time as NHL players had, you still hold out hope for a front office job. With Kyle Dubas and the guy in Arizona whose name is so hard I'm not going to try to pronounce it at this moment. With those young guys coming in, it makes it very difficult. But Kyle Dubas is there, and I know Joel did not give me these talking points, but I know I'll speak on his behalf right now and say that he's very happy with the fact that they've stuck with the plan that was there all along for Dubas to come in as the general manager. He's excited for what he thinks is a logical, he uses the analytics and the eye test complement each other, which I think is what, he's on that cutting edge of where the NHL is going, and he's excited about that. So, do you guys have any thoughts on Dubas? I just wanted to let Joel have his share. Perhaps next week, when he's back on the show, he'll have more, but what do you think?
Do you have thoughts, Rachel, other than him being really young?
Well, I know, Stephen, the Leafs are a little bit of a thorn in your Alberta side.
Well, my non-Toronto side, because
non-Toronto.
Yeah, rest of I'm sure the rest of the country, like the Winnipeg Jets, probably feel the shadow as well. But go on, yeah.
I mean, I think you're right in that this was sort of the natural progression and kind of a foregone conclusion that this was going to happen. And I feel like the Leafs were progressing in the right direction anyway. So, I think having a GM change in a way gives them an extra year or two of cushion in terms of not winning at all, to allow Dubas's system, so to speak, to play out a little bit more. So I think it was actually a really smart in terms of the timing of this. And it does give him a little bit of a wider berth, so to speak, to get it done.
I don't know. I think the rebuild has been a little quicker, but now a little slower, I think, in Toronto. I think last year was a bit of a surprise, and then based on that, they played well this year, but only because, well, not only, but a big reason was because the rest of the Atlantic Division was terrible. And the Leafs could do no worse than finish third, which is where they finished. And I think, but the way that they went out of the playoffs and the way that some of the holes in their roster were exposed, like on defense and perhaps in goal a little bit too, I feel like throwing a rookie GM in at that point with some definite holes to fill now is a little bit risky. Sort of like handing the keys to this kid. No disrespect to him, but I think there's some serious problems with the Leafs that need to be sort of solved if they don't want to go out in the first round again for a third time next year. So I'm intrigued by the timing, but I think it's just because Lamoriello had 3 years, and I think the Leafs probably thought, well, we'll be hopefully at a point where we can make the playoffs in 3 years and then hand it off to Dubas. But then they made the playoffs in their second year of that plan, and all of a sudden they're sort of having to contend with success and trying to sort of reach that next level. And I think now that the Leafs are kind of on the cusp of that, I think that a step back is a bit of is a bit more dangerous than perhaps it was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I guess I also don't have the Toronto sports media specter.
Right. Yep.
Hanging over me. So, the expectations are definitely a lot higher in that market. And so I could be missing that piece of the puzzle in my sports media landscape.
Yeah, I look at it and I say, I agree with what you said, Stephen, that they got to where they were so fast that people kind of, and I did as well, assume that they would stay on that trajectory, but they just plateaued a little. They didn't flatten. They just kind of slowed down, which is fair because I think to go from where they were to draft Austin Matthews to playoffs to second round, third round, Stanley Cup, those are big steps, big leaps to take. But I look at what I've heard from Kyle Dubas and what he's looking for. In his press conference, he wasn't going to come out and say, hey, here's the weaknesses of our teams, this is what we need to do. But, everyone looks at that team and says we need to add defense. I'm fairly certain that unless the only thing that would waver Joel's trust in Kyle Dubas is if he brought back Roman Polak. If Roman Polak is on the Toronto Maple Leafs this time next year, then yes, Joel will have lost all faith in Kyle Dubas. However, he has the confidence to think that he could convince, if that was a Mike Babcock decision, which the amount that he played seems like it might have been, but if he can manage to convince Babcock, or if it was a Lou decision, then that's even easier. They just don't bring it back. But I think that's what this all hinges on for Joel. The defensive rebuild, if it centers around Roman Polak being gone, that's a step in the right direction.
Addition by subtraction, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. That's he did play better, and I know Joel will give Polak some credit for being better, especially come playoff time. He wasn't miserable, which I think is a solid goal to have.
Reach high.
Exactly. Speaking of high, let's talk some high sticking. Our game. For those of you who have never heard of our high sticking game, let me explain how it works to you. What we do is every game of the playoffs, we're doing every game of the playoffs. Normally every week, what we do is Joel and I, in the regular season, we pick the Pavel Bure must-watch game of the night. And that game, you pick one player from each team who you think will score the game-winning goal. You head to our Twitter, or you can email them, Facebook them into us, whatever it may be. You send in your picks. We're doing it for every playoff game. You send those in. If you pick the game-winning goal scorer, you get 3 points. If you pick the first assist, you get 2. If you pick the second assist, you get 1. So, lots happening. We are going to hand out the winner for the second round of the playoffs. What we do is we collect all the points, we put the names in a hat, and we pick a winner based on that. Much like we had in the first round, Mike Laybourne collected some stats on what's happened so far. So if you guys have to guess, who do you think has been the leading game-winning goal scorer so far?
Marchessault?
I would say Scheifele.
Those are some solid guesses. So through the first round, it was Nikita Kucherov. Coming up strong in the second round is actually Andre Palat has had the best performance thus far.
Wow.
In the second round. So that was in the second round of the playoffs. So here's some stats for you. In the second round, I think these are just the second round. 50 players registered points on game-winning goal scorers. 8 of them were right wingers, 12 were left wing, 19 were centers, 10 were defensemen, and 1 Braden Holtby got an assist on a game-winning goal.
Wow.
So much like we learned, Mike used this strategy. He led the standings for round 2 with 26 points himself, 6 points up on Andy and Matt in second and third. Some more stats for you. Patrick Laine scored the most goals for right wingers. He had 2 primary assists. Andre Palat had the most for left wingers. He had 2 game-winning goals in that last round. Dan Girardi somehow led defensemen with a game winner and a secondary assist.
Come on.
Well, that's gross.
And
also, that Patrick Laine stat does not bode well for him having a better manicured beard in the future.
Most certainly not, no. And Paul Stastny led centers with 2 game-winning goals and a second assist. So keep on playing into round number 3. We had 240 high-sticking points were handed out to players in the first round, ranging all the way from 26 points for Mike to 1 point for Brimac QC. So you're all in it. We're all doing the draw now. Why don't we let you guys can decide amongst yourselves. We're going to pick a number between 1 and 240.
Okay. Good. Sounds easy.
So whatever your favorite number between 1 and 240 is, do you want to do that? Or I do have it set up to grab a number for it.
Rachel, do you got a number?
We should probably do the number of years that Doctor Who has been on the air, right?
Perfect. So this is what, the 55th year? 55?
55.
Okay. Mark Scheifele, 55. That's the one we're going with.
55, Mark Scheifele. That is Matt, who wins everything from Reasons Are Several. Congratulations, Matt. We will be in touch with you because we have actually gotten in. We got some new merch in. We have to put some finishing touches on it, so potentially we could find one of those out to Matt. But Matt, send us a DM as you do, and we'll get into round 3. Round 3 has been the hardest of rounds. Through the first 3 games, no one had predicted anything except for one secondary assist. Dan Mount, who's been on the show before, he was the lone point scorer through those first 2 rounds. So congratulations to him. The current leader is a tie between Ken Kallenbach and Dan Rice at 5. So anyone still in it. Lots to happen in the rest of the series. And if these series look like they are going to go long, like they have been thus far, we will certainly see many more opportunities. And we'll keep going into round number 4 for the Stanley Cup Final. What is it? I guess 4 more games per series is 8. 15 more games at most left in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're getting down to it.
It's getting tight, just like the game. Just like the game as we're recording this with Scheifele. Ironically enough, as we called his number, he's the one who scores the 3-2 goal early in the third period. How about that?
There you go. I also learned I was like, oh, you said like the number of years Doctor Who was on TV. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Mike has 26. It's going to be Mike then because it's 1 to 26 is him. No, 55 years. We all learned something new today. Look at that.
Well, 26 was the number of years that it was on during its original run. So the numerology is coming through tonight, let me tell you.
There you go. And that Blake Wheeler.
Oh, wow. He got an assist on the Scheifele goal. It's all coming together.
There it is.
Wow.
All right. Before we wrap up, we want to let everyone know, obviously, you guys are fellow Alberta Podcast Network friends, and we wanted to let everyone know about the great things that are happening at the Alberta Podcast Network. Lots happening. We've been letting you know about some of the events that have been happening. Tons of things that everyone's involved in. Apparently, all these shows, not everyone's just doing podcasts. They have other things happening. One of which is going to be June 7th. It's coming up in Calgary at the Inventors Conference. The Alberta Podcast Network is putting on a live show on June the 7th called Podcasts Connect, a talk fest about the future. You'll get to see That's So Maven, the Work Not Work show, A Branded World, and Future Chat in action, talking to fascinating people about all kinds of innovation. As well, ATB is going to be there to answer questions about all of the transformative things they're up to, AI, blockchain, robotics. A little spoiler, some teasers on next week's show. Mike from the Fifth Line joins us and lets us know what blockchain is. We've been efforting to find out what blockchain is this entire time. We've been talking about this conference. He finally tells us. So we'll find that out next week. But you can head over to podcastconnect.eventbrite.ca to register for this event, or just head to albertapodcastnetwork.com, click on the events button. You will be able to find out everything that is happening. You can find out about this event, things that are happening up in Edmonton, all across Alberta for the Alberta Podcast Network. Lots of great things happening. As well, your guys' show, where can we find Hockey Feels?
You can find Hockey Feels at hockeyfeels.com is our website, and we're also on Twitter and Tumblr, although we don't tumble that much. I think everything just goes to Tumblr. We just is Tumblr still a thing, Rachel? Is that still like?
Yes, it is.
Is this? There we go. Tumblr's still a thing.
Get your gifts right here.
Which Rachel usually goes through to find stuff for our notes section on our podcast, which of course you can find again at hockeyfeels.com.
Yeah, and we go to hockeyfields.com. We are been following you on Twitter even before you were members of the Alberta Podcast Network. Big fans of the Hockey Feels podcast. And what I like is the fact that, much like us, you have two very diverse, different fan bases being covered. You guys have the Flyers, and Rachel, you're in New York, is that right?
Yep.
So you've got the New York angle, the Flyers angle, and then obviously Edmonton with Steven. And, we've got Denver and Toronto covered for that, and then some Alberta flavor thrown in as well. So lots of great stuff happening over at Hockey Feels. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes. If you want to, when you're done leaving us a review, head over, leave them a review. Tell them all the nice things that you think. Most certainly appreciate that. You can find us on Twitter to play High Sticking. Head over to Fourth Line Podcast on Twitter, thefourthlinepodcast.com. Rumors are I might actually write something this week. I'm flying to Quebec City tomorrow. I might write on the flight about my year as a Carolina Hurricanes fan. If you do not tune in for that, tune in to. And actually, there's we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but Ben wrote a piece about what the Sabres should do with Rasmus Ristolainen now that they're drafting a better number one defenseman. And now there's rumors that the Oilers might trade for him, which could always get exciting. So you never know what's going to happen. That threw Oilers Twitter into a flurry today. I'm sure you had some great thoughts about that, Stephen.
I stay away from Oilers Twitter as much as possible.
That's smart.
Yeah. But I know the rumblings of which you speak, and I'll be watching with great interest.
Yeah. So head over there. You can find some great content over there from all of our writing crew. Facebook.com/the Fourth Line Podcast. We're also on Pinterest. If you want to follow us there, we never do anything, but we're there. Until next week. Actually, next week, again, scheduling fun. We will be having a fifth line in place of the regular fourth line. We talk about superpowers on next week's show. That will be coming out for you next week. The date TBD, but that'll be a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun. Mike actually was in Calgary, so the three of us sat around the table and recorded that together. So until next week, I guess, Boom City.